something that comes up all the time, and that's the question of whether or not size matter. I think more importantly, the question is bigger better? Because quite frankly, I think we have enough data to already know that, yeah, size matters, even if it just matters to you. And so today we're going to be discussing, well, what does the scientific literature actually suggest about the size that women prefer? What does the science say about anatomy and how that relates to the preferred penis size, and if bigger is truly better? We're also going to discuss what does literature suggest about the size that women prefer and how that relates to orgasms. And then I'll give my final verdict about, what my opinion is on the matter. This talk is going to be largely related to heterosexual couples, and so keep that in mind. So what the study showed was that the preferred size in length is 6.4 inches and 5 inches in girth for a one-night stand, whereas when you're looking at the length of a long-term partner, it's 6.3 inches in length and 4.8 inches in girth for a long-term relationship. What they concluded in this study is that, women do prefer a larger penis size, but it's only slightly larger than the average in the United States. That is really conclusive evidence right there that, size does matter, but it's not like they're recommending 8 inches or so based on using 3D models that they were actually able to hold in their hands and imagine what that would feel like. I think what's also very telling about the study is if you actually dissect it, which I did a very deep dive of this full paper on another video if you want to check that out, but they showed that 27% of women had mild pain with intercourse, and 36% of women reported discomfort to excruciating pain with intercourse. So that's a substantial amount of women that have pain with intercourse. Therefore, if they're engaging in intercourse with a larger penis, it's going to be more painful, and that might not be something they want to pursue. So that's going to be a theme that continues to come up, is that bigger is not always better. Finally, when you're looking at penis size as a concern, so does size matter to women? 70% of women either said that they had the same amount of kind of average concern about size as the average woman, or less than most women. So most women don't care. Only 15% of women said that they actually preferred maybe a little bit more penis size than the average woman, but there were 0% of women that they said that they cared a lot more about penis size. I also think it's very telling on this study that women have no fucking idea about what the average size is. And so if you actually look at the graph where they guessed basically what an average size was, it ranged everywhere from 4 by 3.5 inches as far as length and girth respectively, all the way up to 8 by 5.5 as the average penis size. So when you're looking at these studies, these surveys, and especially like these online surveys, and it's like, oh, well, women reported they wanted a size of this big, I'm not trying to be in any way dismissive of women, but for the most part, they have no fucking clue what that is, because most of them aren't having a tape measure, and most of them are going by what the guy tells them. And most guys are lying, or at least dramatically overestimating what their size is. So just keep that in mind when you're reading these studies, especially online surveys or self-reported data. The next study we're going to look at is a very interesting study, and this actually looked at women who were transitioning from female to male, and basically construction of what we call a neophallus, which is basically a newly generated penis for sexual intercourse that can be actually, a pump can be inserted into it, and they can actually pump it up and have penetrative sex with it. What they did was try to figure out how big is too big, and they used basically clinical data, and they used actual data from the 3 most successful sex toy online shops. What they found was that of the dildos that were purchased, the average insertable length was only 6.5 inches, and the average girth was 5 inches. And so this is another study that mirrors almost exactly to the decimal point what that other study showed, is that these women, 6.5 inches, that is considerably longer than the average penis length, but it's, once again, we're not talking about 8 inches, and this is just insertable length. And so clearly there is a size preference, but once again, they're not these massive hogs that a lot of guys expect them to be. And so what they also found was that when they looked at the average size of like the very large, extra large dildos, what is the max size preferred? And it was right at 5.9 inches, so just shy of 6 inches, because above that, it was found to be very difficult to have penetrative sex. And that's what they actually found in the clinical data as well, when they had these female to male transitioning people, and they constructed these neophalluses, and that they were greater than 6 inches in girth. It led to problems with sexual dysfunction because they weren't able to actually penetrate with it because it was too large. So once again, another study showing that massive is not always good, and that, bigger is not always good. And sometimes just an average length or slightly above average is the best thing to go for. The next thing we're going to actually address is like pleasure, and when it comes to female anatomy, okay? And so I'm not going to kind of belabor this point. This might have to be a separate video, but we're going to briefly talk about the different types of orgasm. So almost everybody knows about a clitoral orgasm, so extremely superficial, okay? So at least 37% of women need clitoral stimulation with vaginal penetration to orgasm based on medical news today, okay? And only 18% of women have actual vaginal orgasms with just vaginal penetration alone. So that's a very low rate of orgasm. 80% of women either come from clitoral orgasms or a combination of clitoral and penetration. So you don't need to have a massive hog to stimulate the clitoris. Okay, so a G-spot orgasm is if you were to insert your finger into the vagina and then move up in like a come here direction. About halfway up the anterior vaginal wall, you can actually feel a little mound. That is the G-spot, okay? It's not very deep at all, so you don't need a long penis to stimulate this. Cervical orgasms are a little bit deeper. The average depth of the cervix is located somewhere between 3 to 7 inches long, depending on the woman, the size of the woman, and her specific anatomy. But in general, you don't need to have a very large penis to actually hit the cervix. There's an anterior spot, there's the O spot, or the A spot and the O spot. And so they're located basically either anterior or posterior to the cervix, usually stimulated with deeper penetration. But once again, if you're looking at the average depth of the cervix, that you don't need to necessarily penetrate very deeply to reach those levels. Then there's things like nipple orgasms, anal orgasms, additional stimulation to the pudendal nerve with, in the case of anal orgasms. And then there's also blended orgasms. The point of me talking about all this is that almost all of these types of orgasms do not require deep penetration to achieve, especially if you know how to angle your penis in the correct position and you are able to actually use different positions that work to your benefit. And so there's several videos out there on basically the best positions for deep penetration if you're not very well hung. So you can still achieve that deep penetration just depending on what the position that you use. So that being said, most orgasms don't require depth of penetration. Let's talk about what the actual literature says regarding penis size and females' ability to orgasm. There's not great data out there, okay? I'm not gonna lie. All of these papers that I talk about have their own flaws, and please feel free to discuss those in the comments. The first one surveyed 325 women, so we already know it's a flaw. There's a survey that's involved. But basically, what they concluded is that the women that care about longer penises are the women that have orgasms from deeper penetration. And so it's not really, a mind-blowing revelation, but most women actually don't care about the penis size unless they have a deep vaginal orgasm, and then they prefer slightly longer penises, okay? The next paper that we're gonna talk about is, it's actually a similar conclusion, but it's by Brody et al., and it surveyed 1,000 Czech women. And what they found is that the biggest predictor of vaginal orgasm was not penis size. It was in fact proper sexual education and women's mental focus. Once again, penis size is not the key, and we're going to talk about this further, but it's developing the mood, turning your woman on appropriately, and stimulating the right areas, not just ramming a massive hog into a vagina. They did do some interpretation, and they found, similar to the paper by Costa et al. That I just discussed, that the women who have vaginal orgasms from deeper penetration obviously prefer a larger penis, so no surprise there. But once again, this is not the major factor. It's the other mental components that come into sex. The next paper we're going to discuss was actually a study that looked at orgasm rates in different sets of couples. And to probably nobody's surprise, actually lesbian couples had the highest rate of female orgasm, okay? That was at 75%, heterosexual women at 62% rate of orgasm, and bi women at about 58%. In my interpretation of the study, it's women understanding women's body, understanding what turns them on, and understanding what feels good that actually allows for that higher orgasm rate, because they don't even have a penis, okay? And yes, it doesn't clarify, are they using strap-ons, etc. But for the most part, it's knowledge of the anatomy and knowledge of what feels good, not actual penis size. in closing, what are my thoughts? Well, I think it's foolish to say size doesn't matter. It does, to an extent, but bigger is not better. I think size matters in the sense that even if it just matters for you, if you're so concerned about your size that you don't have confidence, that's going to show you're going to be a shitty lover as a result. I do think that size matters, but I do not think that bigger is better, with a few exceptions. And so I think the exceptions where bigger is better is if your girls likes penetrative orgasms almost, exclusively, basically, then yeah, she probably will prefer a slightly larger or a slightly longer penis. Okay. I will say, both anecdotally and if you read in surveys or blogs, all these different areas, most women report that the worst sex that they have had has been with a guy that is very well endowed, because basically he thinks that his large penis is just going to make up for all of his shortcomings, and so he either doesn't try that hard or doesn't know what he's doing, or it can be very painful to be penetrated with a very large object from somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. I think that it's very rare that there are these size queens, and I think that everybody, just like people think that, every headache is a brain tumor, they think that every woman is a size queen, when that's absolutely not the case, even though society, through different movies and pop culture and, heaven forbid, all these fucking Netflix TV shows that shows these big flaccid, prosthetic dicks, that is the norm and that's what women prefer, but it's really not. And I think it's extremely damaging to society at whole, but especially to men and men's self-confidence. Just keep this fact in mind if you watch nothing else from this video, but the average erect penis is 33% longer than the average vagina, okay? There you go right there. I mean, the average penis is longer than the average vagina, and so you don't need to have a massive penis, and I don't think that bigger is better. I think most importantly, you need to understand your partner, understand what they like, understand what turns them on, and then if they do prefer deeper penetration, learn the different positions to achieve that feeling of deeper penetration. And I think that, guys, we got to get out of our own heads, and I'd be a hypocrite if I said that this wasn't me, but you don't need to have a massive dick, regardless of the women that have said mean things or what you see in the locker room or, heaven forbid, all the shit in porn. You don't need a massive dick to still have extremely satisfying sexual intercourse. Now, if you're micro penis or severely below average, then yeah, I think that can impact your ability to have sex, and there are some studies that demonstrate this. But in general, guys, your penis is great. There's nothing wrong with trying to make it bigger, and hence that's, what we do on, r/getting bigger. But, try to learn to appreciate the dick you have and know that, especially when it comes to women's sexual preferences, bigger is not always better. Thanks for watching, guys. If you need any injury counseling or just want my opinion on different PE techniques, check me out on my Patreon. It's /DocHink, DocHink.